Joining me from Dnipro, Ukraine, Aramis Kouzine. This is the first episode of the Canucks Abroad interview series that I will be doing with Northern Starting 11. Aramis, welcome.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
So I just want to give a huge shout out to Peter Racco that helped set this up and connected me to get this interview with you.
He's a good friend who's been helping me. He connected the two of us, and he reached out to me when a couple months ago, and he's been a great friend, been a great help. Talking to me, giving me some great advice along the way, and obviously shout out to him for setting this up.
So let's talk about the setup. Your hometown in Canada is Markham, Ontario, in York Region, where you were born, but you only spent there 11 months.
Yeah, I spent just around 11 months there, basically, from a young age. My family, we moved to the U.S. just before I turned 1. Spent there for about 5 years, and then moved to Russia. And then that kind of started a series of moves to Russia, back to the U.S., back to Russia, and then back to the U.S. again.
You were telling me your grandparents are from there. You go visit them quite often?
Yeah, so I have grandparents, originally from Iran, but they immigrated to Canada at a young age. And so my mom was born in Canada, and I was born in Canada, my whole family, essentially. And yeah, I go back, I see my grandparents, I see my cousins probably at least once a year. I try at least twice, but sometimes it just doesn't work out when it comes to the schedule now. But yeah, I have great love for that place.
So you started playing football in Moscow. Is it true that you played 1 year of futsal with Siska?
Yeah, so when I was in the 8th grade, kind of just going into 9th grade too, I was playing futsal, which is indoor football, with CSKA Moscow. Basically, how that happened was I was looking for a team to play football with. I had trialed with CSKA. I had also been on trial with Dynamo Moscow, some really top-end clubs. And while my performance wasn't definitely beneath any of the players there, it was impossible for me to be registered with any club due to Russian rules. You essentially have to have a Russian citizenship if you wanted to be registered. But futsal didn't have that rule. So for that 1.5 year period that I was living in Russia during that time, I was playing futsal because, at the highest level that I could, because of those rules.
You had the same coach as Christian Pulisic in PA Classics. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's Steve Klein. Steve was a great mentor for me and a great coach for me when I was about 15, 16. It was the under 16. I played academy. Christian had actually left, I want to say, the year or two before I had joined, so I never actually got to meet him. But Steve was an awesome coach. He was probably the first coach to really believe in me. He had tried to take me the year before. Not him, but the club, PA Classics, had offered me a spot on their under 15s team the year before. And so under 16s, it was an easy choice to go to him. I really felt like he had wanted me. And I had probably one of my best seasons in terms of goal scoring as a forward of my youth club career at that point. Steve just helped me along the way, helped me so much with my recruitment. Got me the connection that eventually led to the college that I ended up committing to. So he was a great help for me that year.
And let's talk about the college that you committed to and your time there. You decided to leave early.
Yes. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania. It's an Ivy League school in Philly, which is where I grew up. Kind of when I would say that I was living in the U.S., I was mainly in the Philly area. And so it was kind of close to home. The coach, Rudy Fuller, had done a great job in recruiting me. I really enjoyed the opportunity. And obviously, there's that education part with the Ivy League school. When it came to football, when I had first gone there for probably the first 6 months, as I'm sure a lot of players going from club into college will tell you, that the transition is really difficult, right? You're going from probably being the star of your team or one of the better players on your team to now you're probably average, below average. You're struggling to find minutes. There's a physicality difference. You're not playing with players 3-4 years up. So for those first 6 months, I want to say I really struggled. It wasn't until we got some new assistant coaches, Brian Gill and Peter Lowry, who basically sat me down at the beginning of spring my freshman year, especially Coach Brian Gill. And he basically sat there and he told me, he said, Artie, which is my nickname, he said, Artie, listen, if this is really what you want, if you really want to do this, you have to put in the extra work You have to put in the extra time. We will help you, the coaching staff, but this has to be on you. And it really resonated with me. And basically from that moment, I started doing extra trainings, extra video. I was working with the coaches so much. And for those probably next 6 months, I improved I have not improved that much in that little time for the first 17, 18 years of my life before that moment. So yeah, so then basically I got the opportunity to go overseas to Ukraine, play football professionally. And I knew that that's a chance that might not ever come again. So I knew that I had to take it.
Definitely, and let's talk about an event that marked you as a player in your development. In under 14, under 15, you were cut by an MLS club, the Philadelphia Union Academy. How tough was that, and did that keep you motivated to essentially get an offer from NCAA that led to the professional game?
Yeah, so that was actually probably one of the biggest moments of my club career. I remember how crushed I felt and how upset I was. The first year under 14s, under 15s, I got cut. It was the first year that the Union Academy was forming. I didn't even get invited to a tryout, so I didn't even get the opportunity to be cut that year. And was attending a school in which probably 80, 90% of the kids that were going there was a special football school. 80, 90% of the kids there were going to join the Union. And it was the first year I was the only one of all of them that didn't make it. And I remember hearing them kind of talking about me and, oh, Artie didn't make it, like laughing kind of about the clubs that I could choose from, because there weren't many clubs for me to choose from, even U14, U15 year. So that was a real struggle. But then the next year, I basically just knew I just had to wait for my moment. I just had to be patient. The next year I had a great season, and the under 15s, the Union scouted me. They invited me to a trial. I was doing very well in the trial. And I remember the conversation that I had with I want to say it was the general director. That's what I would say his position was, Tommy Wilson. And he sat me down and he basically said, Artie, listen, you have the technique, you have the ability, you have the athleticism. We just don't know if you have the attitude. And that was one of the most shocking things for me to have ever heard at that moment, because for me, I thought, if anything, that's all that I do have, my attitude. I was the only player that didn't make this team. I've worked myself all the way into getting the trial, to getting you guys interested. So that lit an absolute fire under my belly. And, I went to Steve. Steve believed in me, and I had a great season. I scored against the Union that season, I remember. And then I ended up going to a great college, getting great opportunities after that. That was one of the, I remember, defining moments probably of my youth career. If I'd gone to the Union, who knows what would have happened? Who knows what path I would have ended up taking? Who knows, maybe I would have gotten complacent. Like, you never know what could have happened.
You traveled with Glasgow Rangers, the U20 team, back in 2017. What happened there, and why didn't it work out?
Yeah, so Glasgow Rangers, I was always interested in that team. When I was about 13, I want to say 12 or 13 years old, my club did kind of one of those train abroad, in which we traveled to Glasgow. We trained with Glasgow, with the coaches there. And this was my club from America. So I always had a connection kind of to Glasgow through that. Around the summer, I want to say, of 2016, or the summer of 2017, sorry, I knew that I had been training really well with Penn at this point. This was after our spring. This was even after I had already gotten a contract offer in Ukraine that I was waiting to decide on. And I told my dad, I said, hey, we have kind of this one guy at Glasgow that we know. You think I can even just get some training with them? Not even a trial. Just let me get some training with them this summer. So I managed to get 4 days, basically, at the end of their season in May. I went over. Their under 20s had almost completely ended. So I was training with their under 17s. I was 18 years old at the time. I was training with their under 17s for those 4 days. And at the end of the fourth day, the under 20s coach approached me and he said, hey, we want you back for the beginning of our preseason. We want you on a proper trial here. I said, wow, that's amazing. Basically then prepared for the next month or so, I want to say, getting ready to go on trial at Glasgow. Ended up going, having a great week with them. I was only there on trial for 1 week. And that's what we had agreed with them on. I had an amazing week. I was getting along great with the players. And it basically came down to this final game that we had. There was a game at the end of the week, a friendly. And they actually, in that game, decided to play me not as a forward, but as an attacking midfielder, as a number 10. And my theory has always been that was because I was performing well at that point. that they were trying to see if they could fit me into the squad, because one of the issues was that they had about 3-4 forwards on the first team, another 2 to 3 that were just younger than me on the second team, and coming in from the under 17s. And there was basically just no room for me there at forward. So I played that friendly game as an attacking midfielder, got substituted then, or changed into the forward position a little bit later on in the game, immediately got an assist. And then basically, as I've just been telling you and communicating with you, after the trial was over, they basically said to me, listen, we love you as a player, we love you as a person, but we just don't see the spot for you right now. There's players younger than you, and there's players older than you, and you're kind of at this awkward middle age, at the age of 18, where you should be breaking into the first team around now, and we just don't know if we'd be able to get you there within the time frame that you basically have. But, we'd love to recommend you to any other clubs, and they actually did end up recommending me to other clubs. The head coach is still one of my references. And also, at the same time, the club had a bit of a shock because they got knocked out of the Europa League that week by a team from Luxembourg. So they kind of had a little bit of a financial shock too. Financially, they weren't going to get that Europa League money. The coach was then under pressure. So it was just really not the right time, which is okay. I completely understand that.
So off the record, you were telling me that you didn't consider yourself a star player growing up, yet you ended up at the Ukrainian Premier League. How is that?
Yeah, so for me, I always, in reflection, I like to think that there's two things for anybody that can propel you to accomplish your goals. And those two things are essentially luck and preparation. And when I say that, by preparation, that includes hard work, that includes preparing yourself for the moment, right? If I get in front of goal and I train all of my shots over and over and over again, that's not going to guarantee that I'm going to get that shot in the game. What I'm doing is I'm preparing myself. And then the luck takes over that essentially gets the ball to that location. And that's what then, now I'm prepared to finish that shot. It's the same way when it came to football for me. Just because I never always made the best team, just because I wasn't always a star, that didn't mean that I wasn't prepared for when I had my moment. And that's essentially what I always did. I was always working extra. I was always making sure that I was training my athleticism, making sure that I'd be the first one to the ball in the box, for example, making sure that when I got to the ball in the box that I'd be able to finish that chance. And, that led to goals. The goals led to me then getting opportunities. The opportunities then led to me training harder, developing more, setting myself up for more luck, essentially, preparing for that. And basically every situation has kind of just fallen into place. Just like how with Glasgow, the situation wasn't essentially lucky enough. Like, I didn't come at a time when maybe they had some injured forwards. There were no youth players coming in. That would have been, a lucky situation, but it wasn't like that. Now, the opposite for in Ukraine, when I came in, and, we can get to that a little bit later, but essentially it's those two things, preparation and luck. I felt that always is what has helped me, and especially that preparation part, just making sure that when the moment comes that I'm ready to take it, making sure I'm putting in the extra hours, making sure I'm doing the hard work. I was always training 2-3 times a day for my entire club career, all the way up until now. I still train extra. I still train extra hour, extra 2 hours on my finishing, on my athleticism, whatever it is that people are telling me I need to work on, whatever it is I see myself that I need to work on. And I'm just trying to do the best that I can to make the most of my opportunities.
If you can touch base, signing your first professional contract, chances that led to that, and how did you get that opportunity instead of that led to the offer?
It's a funny story kind of that surrounds that. It was basically around that time in spring when I told you that the assistant coaches came to me and they told me, Artie, you need to start taking this seriously. I really started taking it seriously. I took that advice to heart. For the next 2 months, I was training extra, taking every single fitness drill we were doing, making sure I was doing it to the max. I mean, that was basically a college off season in the spring. And I was making sure that I wasn't going to take a single day off. And so what had happened was we were coming to our spring break, which was the March of 2017. And I was really performing well in training. Probably every training where we were playing, I was scoring 3, 4, 5 goals. I felt like I was in a great physical shape. And I told my dad, I said, hey, is there any chance that during spring break I can just get some training somewhere? Like, I know we have no connections. There's no agent involved. There's nothing. Can I try and get some training with some kind of professional club, some kind of team over in Europe? I just want that experience. So he goes, all right, let me see what I can do. From his side of the story, he basically tells me that he asked my grandpa, who lives in Ukraine. My grandpa knew nobody, so he asked his old friend, who was my dad's first ever basketball coach. That guy didn't, he's a basketball coach. He asked his friend, who happened to be some kind of technical director for the youth academy of this second tier team in Ukraine, which was Obolon. And that guy goes, okay, sure, let this Canadian kid come from college here. He can train with our second team or our third team, whatever, for a week. I show up in Ukraine for March break. I get there, I'm jet lagged, and my grandpa says to me, listen, tomorrow the first team has a game. Now, who knows who we'll meet there? Who knows what'll happen there? Let's go to it. Let's just see what happens. So the next morning we get up. I'm jet lagged. I wanted to sleep a little bit more. He woke me up. We had my breakfast. We go to the training base of this team, probably like a 30, 40-minute drive. Still kind of winter time. There's snow around the pitch. I'm cold. Everybody around, there's probably 10, 12 people at most watching this game in terms of fans. And my grandpa just starts talking to somebody on the sideline. And I wasn't very good at Russian at this point. I couldn't really understand what was going on. So I'm just watching the game. I'm watching the level. Afterwards, we get back into the taxi and my grandpa explains to me, he goes, oh yeah, I was just talking to the director of the entire club. He says they have no clue that you're coming here. They have no idea. They don't know who you are. I go, oh, great. All right. That means I'm not getting any training. And he goes, but he said that there's a game for the second team tomorrow for the under 19s. If you want, you can play in it. They expect you to come. I'm like, great. Next day I show up. I play in the game. And in that game, I happen to score 2 goals and have an assist. And just like that, I'm immediately brought up to the first team, trained with them for another 3-4 days. And by the end of those 4 or 5 days, I was offered a contract. And just like that, I took the moment that I had. I made sure that I was prepared for it. And essentially through this random series of events, from my dad asking my grandpa, who asked an old coach, who asked this person, then we go to this scrimmage, this friendly game. We meet the director. He gives us an offhanded trial, essentially. And then I basically just made the most of that opportunity. And within 5 days, I had a contract offer. So that's the way that situation went. It was all pretty crazy. It happened really quickly. And then I basically didn't sign the contract for probably another 6 to 8 months because, again, I knew that there was possibility with Glasgow. I wanted to see what my college coaches kind of had to say. I wanted to see maybe that it wasn't the right choice, but in the end, I thought it was the right choice. So then I ended up signing with them.
Wow, what a story. Like you say, random series of events that led to each moment and you making the most of that moment too. When did you kind of tell your coach back in the States, back in Pennsylvania, that, hey coach, I'm signing pro and the eligibility was essentially gone?
That wasn't a fun conversation because I wasn't sure exactly how the reaction would be. I knew that at the time, because of how well I was training, and I knew that when I was recruited, that I was brought in to replace the senior. When I was a freshman, there was a senior who was a forward who was leaving, and that I was kind of brought in to replace him. So I knew that if I left, I'd be kind of leaving a gap in that position, in the forward position. So when I told the coach the first time that I had basically gotten a contract offer, I don't know if this was immediately after March break. I don't know if he took what I had said seriously. I don't know if he really understood that I genuinely had gotten a contract offer. I think he thought maybe I was just blowing something out of proportion, but he was just like, great, already good. Let's get back to work, this and that. But then when it came to the summer, towards the end of the summer, as we were getting closer to the preseason of college, I was really considering it. I went to the coach and said, Coach, no, I'm really considering this offer. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I was straight up told, Artie, you're not ready. You're not good enough. You're going to be, eaten alive in the professional world. You need more time here to prepare. We'll prepare you. We'll get you to that point. And I can see from his perspective, I understand that from the coach's perspective, number one, he wants to keep his best players around. And number two, he really genuinely might have thought that I wasn't ready. And that's 100% fair. But for me, I knew that this opportunity doesn't always come. So I was convinced, not even by the head coach, I was convinced by Coach Brian Gill and Coach Peter Lowry. I was convinced by them. They really made the compelling argument to me that, listen, stay here and we will really develop you. Like, we really believe that there are some things that we can help you with. By the end of that sophomore season, I actually ended up leaving the team probably after about 5-6 games because I realized college is just not not the right place for me right now. I need to go and I need to have this professional experience. So again, I had another conversation with the coach. I said, coaches, I'm leaving the team. I'm going to be signing this contract. I appreciate all the hard work, and I still caught up with the coaches. Probably after about a year, I caught up with Coach Gill. He's now the head coach at Penn. They're really successful, so I'm really happy for them. But yeah, that's basically the way that happened. It wasn't the most pleasant series of conversations, I can say, with the head coach, the assistant coaches. They tried their best. Everybody, I can understand everybody's perspective, but I also needed to do what was in my best interest at the time.
And playing in Ukraine, how special is it to face Shakhtar Donetsk and Dynamo Kiev in their stadiums with their fans and the players that they have?
That's not something that you really can understand until you're kind of playing against them. The day after tomorrow, we're going to be playing against Alexandria, which is a team in the Europa League. We're playing them in a friendly game while the international break is going on. Hopefully, I'll be getting into that game. I'm not going to say that I am, knock on wood, but there's a good chance that I will be. And it's hard to understand, really. It's hard to comprehend because you kind of grow up watching these teams. Maybe not necessarily Dynamo Kiev. Of course, I always heard the stories from my dad of their glory days, and Shakhtar, you always know they do well in the Champions League. But even as far as 3-4 months ago, I was playing in the first league of Ukraine. I wasn't even thinking that I would have the chance to play against these teams. So now when I'm in the position to go to their stadiums, for them to come to our stadium, for me to just walk by their players in the tunnel, brush shoulders with them, that's crazy. These guys, they're national team players, Europa League players, some are Champions League players in the Shakhtar team. So it's unbelievable. The competition is insanely competitive. It's a very, very high level, I can say. And as I was telling all of my friends and all of my former teammates, even in the past year and a half, I said, man, Ukraine, the quality here is amazing. And I'm surprised that people don't pay as much attention. And now they just won, the Under-20 World Cup. They're first in the men's team is first in their group ahead of Portugal. And, now everybody kind of realizing, oh, wow, Ukraine really is a threat. But before then, people weren't really noticing it. But, I've kind of been seeing it for the last year and a half, 2 years. Yeah, there's really some quality here. There's a lot of quality players.
And the best players you faced, you just mentioned Ukraine winning the U20 World Cup. The goalkeeper was Andrei Lunin, a Real Madrid product, was loaned to Leganes in La Liga. Tell me, what's the best player you've played against so far in your career? Is it the guy that went to Schalke?
Well, I have to tell you, Konoplyanka never actually trained with us. So, off the record, I was talking to you about kind of Yevgen Konoplyanka, who's a player that played at Schalke. He played at Sevilla, and he's now currently playing at Shakhtar Donetsk. And I have to say, probably the best players that I've seen on the pitch this season is probably Marlos. He's a Brazilian forward for Shakhtar Donetsk. He's insanely crafty with the ball. There was one move that he once did against Dynamo where he, from the half field, did a flip-flap, megged the defender, then played a beautiful through ball for an assist. It just absolutely magical feat on that guy. So probably Marlos, he actually got Ukrainian citizenship because he's been playing in Ukraine for long enough, so he plays for the Ukrainian national team now. Him, probably Tyson, who was not rumored, Roma was trying to buy Tyson. Shakhtar, I believe. I don't know what the situation was. I guess they might not have let him go. Yeah, probably those two.
Aramis, what nationalities are you? Which countries are you eligible for?
I have a Canadian passport only right now, Canadian nationality. I'm eligible for Canada. With that being said, I have Ukrainian background. I have Ukrainian roots. I can get a Ukrainian passport too. And I also have the ability to get a Cypriot passport, which would be really amazing because, as most players from North America will know, an EU passport can do wonders for you in terms of getting you opportunities to play around Europe. Basically, Cyprus, Ukraine, Canada. Those are my three options. As I said, I'd love to play for Canada one day.
Even if you lived in the US and Russia, you're not eligible for either of those two countries?
No. So the US, I don't have any family members, I guess, that would be able to sponsor me for a green card. Maybe my older brother, possibly, but I don't have too much interest in getting a U.S. passport because, I'd much rather play for Canada. I feel much more Canadian. And in terms of Russia, I'm not entirely sure. I also, my dad, he has kind of Russian roots, but there's nothing concrete there. So I don't think that's really a possibility.
Is there a goal to be on that U23 Olympic qualifying team in March, where John Herdman said that he wanted his best players available to be released for that tournament?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's definitely one of the things that I'm trying. That's one of my goals for this season is to try and make that team. If we're talking about purely in terms of the quality of the teams that other forwards are playing for, there's probably only 3 to 4 Canadian forwards in European leagues. When you look at under 23, there's only probably 2 or 3 of us. I mean, there's Jonathan David. There's, I believe, Pablo probably at Barcelona B, maybe Liam Miller, but I think he's more of a winger, attacking midfielder. And then there's me, basically, in terms of just the quality of the team that we're playing for, in terms of the league. That's essentially the company that I'm in. So obviously, if I can win a spot in this team, on this roster, over, for example, a Ukrainian under 21 forward, Supiaga, over the veteran goal scorer Kulish, who's played on a number of Premier League teams here. If I can, get a spot, then, absolutely that would make me feel like, that would give me that confidence that my goal is making that U23 camp.
Aramis, what's your preferred position on the pitch? How would you describe yourself?
My preferred position on the pitch is forward. I would say more as a second striker. I'm big, and that's always kind of gotten people to think of me as a hold-up. But really, I would say that my talents are better used, not purely as a hold-up, but more so as a creative forward, as a creative outlet, almost like a hybrid 10/9. I think my best qualities, especially having now played for the last year and a half, 2 years in Ukraine, is my thinking. There's a really high speed of play here. There's a really high emphasis on the quality of passes that you make, the quality of your positioning. I would say that's a big thing. I think my movement, I think I don't necessarily make common moves that maybe other forwards make. I think I tried to switch it up a little bit. I tried to be a little sneaky, kind of get in the back, receive the ball at my feet, because I also think have the technique to be able to take players one-on-one on the dribble. I think my passing, if I'm honest, is a little bit underrated. But yeah, really, I think as like that creative forward, that would be my position, even as like not like a number 9, but kind of like Firmino, the way he plays, as a false 9. I would say it like that.
Do you have any interest in returning to North America at some point?
Yeah, so of course, 3-4 months ago, I was feeling a little bit homesick. I'm sure, as most people do. You always imagine what it would be like to play in front of your friends, in front of your family, in front of people you grew up. Obviously, that's an interest of mine. I trained with an MLS team, in fact, this past summer. Found the level to be interesting. I wouldn't say that it was anything out of my capabilities. I think I could play in the MLS. I think I could have that quality. It's certainly, from an infrastructure standpoint, having played in Ukraine, there's cold winters here. It can ruin pitches. It can ruin the roads. From an infrastructure standpoint, I've seen some of the bases around the MLS. I've seen that it's really an interesting idea. For right now, though, I would have to say that my priority is probably staying in Europe, just because when you're already in Europe, there's a lot of opportunities to progress, to go from, one team in one country to another team in another country in maybe a similar division. Then you can promote to a higher division in that country, then to another one. So there's opportunities in Europe, in terms of the quality, the way it is here. I have to say my priority right now is Europe. But again, if I receive some kind of opportunity that I believe is what's gonna be the best for, in terms of development, in terms of, overall for my career, that comes from one of those leagues, then of course I have to evaluate it. Of course I have to consider it, and if it is what's best for me, then of course I'll take it.
Having played in Europe and growing up in the US, what would you say sets apart footballers in each country?
I would say there's obviously a few differences. Athletically, I would say it's fairly similar, just because America and Canada, as in terms of athletics, there's no lacking. There's no difference. But what it really comes down to is in Europe, every single player, more or less, their technical ability is extremely strong. It's extremely high. You go from the goalkeeper all the way up to the forward, all the way to the bench, and to the reserves. Every player is technically extremely sound. They're comfortable with the ball. They're comfortable receiving it. They're comfortable passing it. They're comfortable controlling it, finishing it. And I would say that having grown up in the U.S. and having gone through kind of the development of the U.S., there's not as high of an emphasis on like pure technical ability. It's always like, all right, you're technical, okay, you can go and play wing. All right, you're not technical, go play center back. Don't worry, we can cover up like your mistakes or something. So I would say that's one of the big differences. I would say tactically, coaches and players here are very advanced, both offensively and defensively. It's hard to explain because obviously I don't have the professional experience that I have here. I don't have that experience in the US or in Canada. So I can't 100% say. I can just talk from what I've seen. And I would have to say that it's very disciplined in Europe. You know, coaches have their philosophies. They have the players that they want that fit their philosophies most of the time. And it's extremely, extremely disciplined. And lastly and this is probably one of the biggest differences. When I talk to footballers in this country and I go, hey, you know, so if football doesn't work out, what's your other option? They go, what do you mean if football doesn't work out? Football is going to work out. I'll play amateur. I'll play semi-pro. I'll play wherever. I'm going to play football. There's no side job. There's no backup plan. There's no plan B or plan C. And I think that while I'm not saying that's the correct way, that does give a lot of players that hunger and motivation that you might not see. For example, if you go to college, I know very well how easy it is to get complacent. For example, if you're in college and you know, all right, well, if football doesn't work out, you know, I can still always go into that business, or I can go into, you know, tech, or I can go into something else that, you know, can be my backup plan.
To finish up, how do you see the CPL, and what do you think should be the league's relationship with Canadian players abroad?
I think the CPL has a really unique opportunity. I think them starting new, I think they should look at themselves as an opportunity to be a springboard to advertise talent and then send them over to Europe, essentially. I think they should want players to see the CPL as an opportunity to showcase their abilities to essentially European scouts and then move over here to Europe. One of the bigger issues can be is if you turn it into, I'm not going to say a retirement league, but if you turn it into like a league for 27, 28-year-olds, and you place a lot of emphasis on, you know, for the coaches, oh, you have to win now, you got to win now. Of course, winning is a big deal, but Canada has a lot of talent. And if you can develop that talent and send them overseas, not only is it financially profitable for those teams, but that will create interesting football. It will create a lot of buzz from Europe to tune into the Canadian League, similar to kind of the model that Holland has, similar to the model that I want to say, for example, Denmark has. You know, you want players to see the league as an opportunity to showcase their talent and then to, you know, essentially go to, you know, bigger and better opportunities.
Right, a league that is known for selling.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I think they have the right start. You know, I believe they have the U21 minutes rule, under 20 minutes rule. I think that's a great start. You know, make sure teams are playing their young players, because it's very easy for a coach that, for example, has pressure to win to go, all right, you're too young, I'm not going to play you. That's a common response. It's a common thing to look at a player's age and think that they're maybe not ready to handle the pressure, to handle the physicality or whatnot. But how are they ever going to learn? How are they ever going to adjust or anything if they're not getting those minutes? So, you know, if you can get players comfortable, if you can make it a league where, you know, it's all about showcasing your talent, it's all about playing nice football, having these excellent players develop and then move on, I think that's really the direction that the league should be going, and I think that's going to create the most attractive brand of football in Canada.
Aramis, thank you so much for your time, and before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like the viewers listening to this interview to know about you?
I think I want everybody to just kind of know that, number one, that there are opportunities in Europe. Don't be afraid to take that step. Don't be afraid to take a shot at what you think, you know, might be a risk. It's important, you know, you got to test yourself. You got to test your limits, you know, especially while you're young. That's number one. And number two is that, you know, this is more so for Coach Herdman and for Coach Biello, you know, coaches, if you want to give me a shot, I'm ready. I think I have the talent. I think I can help Team Canada. I think I can help the under 23s, especially in the near future. So I'd appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to do everything that I can to prove it to you guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time, and best of luck this season.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Take care.